To help illustrate the approach, I'd like to share with you a typical MDFT case. Nick had just turned 16 when his mother, Carol, dragged him into treatment. Nick was using multiple drugs, mostly marijuana, some cocaine, Xanax, or ecstasy, with alcohol. At one point an average student, Nick's schoolwork declined for the past year. He now cut classes frequently and easily found friends to smoke with on school days and on weekends. Eventually, he was suspended from school. When he began the MDFT program, Nick was using on a daily basis. He said he had no motivation to stop using. "I love getting high, it calms me down." Nick had no desire to be in treatment. He came to the first interview at his mom's insistence. Nick's been using drugs regularly since age 11. His mother knew Nick smoked marijuana, and she suspected he did other drugs as well. But she was afraid to confront him. Although she didn't like Nick's drug use, initially she wasn't too concerned, given her own past drug use and drinking problem. But Carol became more alarmed and sought help when she realized the extent of her son's drug involvement, and he was suspended from school. Drug abuse had derailed Nick's development. In this case, both mother and son were struggling with addiction. Carol no longer used illicit drugs, but her extensive drinking affected her son profoundly. It interfered with her own functioning at work and her parental responsibilities. She wasn't monitoring Nick's day-to-day activities, nor providing any structure or guidance. Because of her drinking, she didn't pay attention when Nick's school informed her of his academic problems. Most of all, drinking compromised Mom's ability to have a solid relationship and therefore to positively influence Nick. With little monitoring and parental guidance, Nick became quite independent. He made most of his own day-to-day decisions and thought of himself as a grown-up. And although he was able to care for himself in many ways, Nick was becoming more deeply involved with drug-using friends and using more frequently too. His problems in school were getting worse, and his reaction was to skip classes even more. Since he already had 2 consecutive years where he had to repeat a grade, Nick said he didn't care. He said he just gave up. What's the use? Carol's history of sexual abuse and drug use made it difficult for her to function. She was often absent from the home, and this disrupted family life. Mother and son were rarely together or had meaningful talks. Their relationship deteriorated. There was no one else in Nick's life to care for him or be a positive role model. Although he had friends, Nick said that he felt alone in the world. In working with Nick, the therapist identified 2 major areas of potential focus: feelings of failure associated with school, and the conflict and anger he felt toward his mom. Nick's resentment of Carol was obvious. He repeatedly told the therapist that his mother always talks crap and makes promises, but never follows through. In Phase 1 of MDFT, treatment goals are established. Here, the primary goal was to improve the mother and son relationship. Bit by bit, they would work on relationship and life issues. This would contribute to Nick's capacity to change a drug-using lifestyle into a more developmentally normal one. In individual and family sessions, therapists helped teens address what's going on with them as they travel the path of adolescence. Teens might use drugs to cope with day-to-day problems, their feelings about themselves, worries about the future, or preoccupations about the past. So therapists help them deal with normal developmental issues, like defining an identity or coping with the stress of a parent that's using. In typical early-stage work with the teen, the therapist worked on ways to generate hope and facilitate self-examination. She focused on skills to help him express anger and frustration. Drug use became less important, and they discussed Nick's not being involved with drug-using peers anymore. The therapist also worked with Nick so that he could rededicate himself to school. All of this occurred in a relationship in which he could sort out his ideas about what had been happening in his life and change his relationship with his mom. During the first meeting, Nick was angry for having been forced to attend the program. Still, Nick started to talk about wanting to play football, to help his mom around the house, and reverse his slide at school. Nick's aspirations revealed goals. Carol's concern was not only her son, but her drinking as well. By this point, Carol realized that her drinking was detrimental to her and to her relationship with Nick. Her inconsistent monitoring of Nick was an obvious intervention target, but bringing Carol to a position where she'd see herself as a positive source of influence for Nick was essential. That was phase 1. In MDFT's middle stage, phase 2, everyone works to affect change in day-to-day life. Throughout, the treatment format involves individual and family sessions and meetings with influential others outside the family. People such as teachers, probation officers, or job training coordinators. Sessions are held at the clinic, at the family's home, or with family members at school, family court, or other community locales. We work to eliminate barriers to treatment, so wherever therapists need to go, they go. This refers to the content and focus of the work, as well as to practical considerations, such as the session locale or the inclusion of people who can help to change the day-to-day circumstances of the youth and family. In this stage, the therapist facilitates change in the adolescent and parent, individually and with each other, as well as with both of them in relation to outside forces of interest. Individual sessions with the teen focus on core developmental tasks, such as identity exploration, self-expression, and why and how to have good relationships. Peers, changes in family relations, decision-making, and competence in varied situations, including school, are also a focus. Teens are helped to express and make sense of their thoughts, their feelings, and experiences. They also learn how to problem solve by identifying and coping with life stressors. School tutoring and job skills are included as needed. The mid-treatment stage involves more directive change attempts, not only with the adolescent, but with the parents too. Parents examine current parenting practices and work toward new skills. They learn to distinguish influence from control. They accept that not everything can or needs to be changed for them to have a positive influence on their child. Parents' motivation to do these things springs from a process that the therapist facilitates. In Carol's case, the motivation was to take on her drinking problem again, and to do this because her son's future was on the line. The motive that drives a parent's willingness to start monitoring, struggle through setting limits, and to work toward accepting their child, while at the same time expressing how much they care about them, is emotional connection. Or simply put, love of one's child. Individual sessions with parents refocus their experience of and efforts on behalf of their child. First, therapists help parents to recognize that there's an accumulating danger and jeopardy present for their child. This accentuates concern, mounting to heightened worry, even fear. These are emotional processes and conclusions about their child and their family situation that motivate parents to reach out again and do everything possible to get their child back on the right track. In the midst of this process, parents frequently say, "I'll do whatever it takes to help." Therapists structure family sessions by helping members talk directly to each other. This method alters and improves a family's interactional patterns. It's an indispensable means of changing family relationships.